So I have a question for you, a question that you may have asked yourself at some point in time. Maybe this question has bubbled up when you're watching the news and you see the story of an average everyday person all of a sudden is all over the headlines for some reason. Or maybe this thought comes to your mind when you're flipping through your phone, through social media, and you see a story go viral. Have you ever wondered to yourself, I wonder what it's like to go viral, you know? I wonder what it would be like to be that person who posted that thing that's everywhere now for some reason. Because we all have an idea, a thought we might want to share with the world, right? So let's say one day you decide, you know what, I'm going to write this out. Yeah, you finally say to yourself, no, I'm going to write this out, I'm going to get it all down. And so you do, you type it all out, you log in, you post this idea of yours, and then you just go to sleep. But as you're sleeping, the view counts roll into the millions. You wake up and this message has spread around the world. All of a sudden, the local news, they're at your door, and they got questions for you about this post that you made last night. But it's not just the local news, it's the national news too. And this, all of a sudden you find yourself on a talk show, this guy named Steve Harvey's giving you a jacket with his name all over it, telling you to wear this jacket, but it's ugly and you don't want it, but you're nervous because, you know, it's, okay, I'll take it. And they stop calling it Cleveland, Ohio, where you're from. They call it Cleveland, USA now because you're live in Australia. And then these TED Talks and all this nonsense, all because of what? Just like a button, you know? A single click, and your entire existence, it fundamentally changes forever. Have you ever wondered, perhaps, I wonder what it's like to go viral? Well, my name is Alex Sheen. I'm the founder of Because I Said I Would. For better, for worse, I know exactly what it's like to go viral. And I'd like to tell you the story of how that happened and what I learned from it. It's a story that actually starts with my dad, shown here. Getting a little bit chubby in this area, just a little bit, Dad. It's funny. I remember when I was like a little kid, like a real little kid. I remember looking up at my dad and being like, man, Dad, you are not good looking. And that was like a really unfortunate thought because I would grow up to look exactly like him. So that sucks for me. But it's true, my father was average looking. He was average a lot of things, right? We're not talking about some kind of war hero. My father didn't write books or run marathons. He was just a pharmacist in a hospital for 25 years. And sure, through his profession, he tried to help people, right? I mean, you work in a hospital, that's probably what you should do there. But the truth is, if you would have ever known my father in some other life, you would never go home and talk about Al Sheen, right? He was far too average, too everyday, too normal for you to want to do that, right? Unnoticeable. Except for one thing. My father was a man of his word. To me and to my brother, when he said he was going to be there for you, he showed up. My father was far from a perfect person, but he kept his promises. And it turns out when it comes to keeping promises in this life, well, a lot of people, they just don't do that anymore. And so one day, my father, this kind of dweeby pharmacist guy, he's sitting at home, and he hears his phone ring. So he grabs it and he turns it over, and it's the hospital calling. Well, of course, this is where he works. So he swipes, he answers, and on the other line is a doctor, a friend of his that he works with. And in this phone conversation, my father is informed that he has been diagnosed with stage 4 small cell lung cancer. Now, my father was a go-down swinging kind of man. He came to this country as an immigrant. And I say that because sometimes it's not so easy making it on your own. You have to develop some pretty tough skin to get by. And so with this attitude throughout his life, at this point of his diagnosis, my father elected for the most aggressive treatment. for radiation and chemotherapy. Now, a lot of people have obviously heard the phrase chemotherapy, right? No. But not many people actually know what it is. You know, chemotherapy is quite literally a poison. It was developed prior to World War II and it is based on a primitive concept. The thought is that you poison the body so deeply that the cancer cannot survive in its conditions, but perhaps this is the only way to give a patient the chance. Now, remember something for a second. My father was a pharmacist in a hospital for 25 years. He knew more about the drugs he was taking than a lot of people ever will, and with that comes a distinct knowledge, a scientific understanding of the odds that are against you, and in the case of my father, those odds were terrible. But sometimes we got to go down swinging, right? So my father, he took this treatment, and it actually started to work. You know, this tumor that grew so close to my father's heart that it was surgically inoperable, couldn't be cut out, it began to shrink. So small that you couldn't see it on any of these medical scans. They kept doing on my dad over and over and over again. And even him, the most genuine of skeptics, I assure you, he deemed it some sort of miracle. Now, perhaps he was saved. So I don't know if your family's ever dodged something like this, but this is good news, right? You know, this is incredible turnaround for my father's health, so I feel like we got to celebrate. You know, I went to college. I know how to celebrate, right? So I go to my dad. I used to call him old man, right? And I said, old man, listen, anything you want, Dad, anywhere you want to go. Money is no object. Whatever you want, anything. Doesn't matter. Okay, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? Let's hear it, Dad. What does he say? He wants Chinese food. Of course you do. Same damn Chinese restaurant every single time. Doesn't matter what the occasion is. But you know how dads are, right? They got their routine. They like what they like, right? So you just let them have it. We go to this place called Sunflower in Columbus that his buddy owns, and you know, whatever. So it was a good meal. It was a good day. The kind of day that obviously I think a lot about, and the kind of day that I wish I had just one more of. But as many of you have already noticed, I speak of my father in the past tense. The cancer would return to his lungs. It would spread into his liver, into his pancreas, and into his brain. On September 4th of 2012, it was a bright morning. Not unlike this morning. In the house that I grew up in as a child, as a grown man, I would go to my father's bedside and I'd play some music for him that I thought he might like. I held his hand, and with the best ability that I had as his son, I desperately tried to comfort my father as he died. Now, you and I, we are only strangers. And I do not know if you have ever lost someone that you love. I have. His name was Sheen. He had 2 sons, and I'm one of them. I was named after him. And you know, in the course of all of our losses, we have so many questions, you know? Like, why him and why now? Why does it have to be me and my family? And in the course of this sorrow, we just don't give very many answers. In my struggle, I was asked by my family to give my father's eulogy, to speak to his greatest characteristic, his greatest quality as a man. And I kept coming back to this thought, the importance of a promise. You see, too often in this life, people say things like, I'll get to it, or tomorrow. Well, I've learned that one day there is no tomorrow. And the promises that we make and we keep, and those we choose to dishonor, that is what defines us and our character. It always has. Long before my father was ever born and long after I go, it is a single measure of honor. One that we use so quickly to judge other people, right? How they treat their promises. But perhaps as quickly we should use this measure to judge ourselves. I would give my father's eulogy, and the title of this speech would be Because I Said I Would. I would talk about the importance of a promise that day at his funeral, and for the very first time, I would hand out one of these. I called it a promise card. On the front, it says, Because I Said I Would. On the back, there is nothing else. It is very simple to use. What you do is you take a promise in your life. You know, maybe it's something small that you said today, or maybe it's something so deep that it defines part of your purpose for existing on this planet. You write that promise on this card. You go to the person you're making that commitment to. You tell them, I'm going to fulfill this promise, and when I do, I earn this card back. The card is a symbol of my honor, my respect. It is my property, and I'm coming back for it. You go, you fulfill your promise, you come back to that person, you earn your card back, and you keep it as a reminder that perhaps you are a person of your word. You know, maybe someone like Sheen was to his sons. And so his funeral ends and I go home. And the next thing I would do would set off a chain of events to the scope of which I may never understand. That is where the internet comes in. See, I would make this post online, an offer. I said that I would mail, like physically mail. I said that I would mail 10 promise cards to anybody, anywhere in the world, at no cost to anyone, which was the dumbest financial decision I have ever made in my entire life. First lesson today, don't offer free stuff to strangers on the internet, okay? They love that stuff. Don't do it. And so this is a picture of the first 5 sets of cards I ever sent out. You know, 5 requests in a day is no big deal. You wake up early, you go to sleep late, a few here and there, whatever. It's not a hassle. That's 5 requests in a day, though. But what if you were to wake up and you had like 50 requests? Or 500? Or one morning you wake up and it's 15,000. What do you do then?
You go bankrupt.
Pretty close. Well, I would have to figure out that plan. And that is because since September 4th, 2012, the day that my father left, we have distributed over 9.81 million promise cards to over 153 countries around the world, and by request only. You know, 153 countries. This card, 153 countries. I mean, the damn thing is in English. I don't understand. Clearly they don't all speak that, you know. But it turns out it doesn't matter what language you speak. It doesn't matter the color of your skin, how old you are, who you love, or how much money you make. We all understand the importance of a promise. It is something that is core and elemental to human existence. In fact, talk to a historian or an anthropologist, someone who studies human culture. Find an isolated tribe, a group of people who essentially know only of themselves, and still in that isolation, you will see the importance of a promise living in that culture. Perhaps it was something born inside of us. I would learn this lesson not from my father about the ubiquity of commitment. I would actually learn that part from humanity itself, because people started to post pictures of their promises. And maybe that's a promise to someone who's close to you, right? Like to a family member. Like this young girl writes, I promise to make life worth living for my sister with Down syndrome every day of her life, and to take care of her when my parents are no longer able to. A promise can be in recognition of a simple fact. Like this young man in the Czech Republic, he knows, he is certain that somebody somewhere has got to need that half liter of blood more than he does. And so he commits to donating to help the sick or the injured. A promise can even be a random act of kindness. Like this 14-year-old girl in Brunswick, Ohio writes, I will sit and make friends with the kids who sit alone at lunch. Because, a lot of times we just say things, right, and it doesn't mean much to us, but to that other person, she realizes it could be the earth. And in other instances, I don't have to go into some kind of deep background story. You see a picture, you read the words, and you could understand what a promise might mean to a family, to a country. But you see, these cards weren't always used in the first way that I described. Not always an exchange between two people. The cards really come with no instructions, and so they were used in creative ways. Just maybe even as a personal reminder. Like I remember this one woman, she wrote, I promise not to text or Facebook while driving, but instead of giving that card to anyone, she actually just put it in the console of her car. And every time she got in her car, she would take that card out and she would put it on her phone and twist it as a physical lock screen. A reminder that she cared more about the safety of a stranger than a text that most certainly can wait. This card would be used in ways that I could never forecast or fathom. In fact, entire schools, humanitarian organizations, nonprofits started to use these cards not just as to make an individual promise, but maybe to make the same promise together, to do what only can be done together. And so I try to explain the humanitarian nature of this origin and everything, and I get up here, I do my dog and pony show and whatever, but sometimes things get lost in translation, right? About the humanitarian nature of what we are. Things get lost in translation because of the internet. The internet, it's a terrible place. And so sometimes people write goofy things on this card. Like I remember at the beginning of a year, this one dude wrote, "I will get the Christmas lights down before Easter." Real top of the mountain kind of stuff there. Very nice. I guess the point is I could stand up here all day and literally tell you 30-second stories, one after the other, like for hours and hours and hours. But obviously a story can be very deep. There can be a lot behind it. A story could be one day all that we have left. And so I'd like to at least tell you one longer story, the story of a man named Garth Callahan. Okay, Garth is 49 years old. He lives just outside of Washington, D.C., actually closer to Richmond, Virginia. And he's this kind of like cheesy dad, right? Like, so some of you may have cheesy dads, right? Some of you may be married to cheesy dads. A few of you appear to be cheesy dads. Not going to name names. But this guy, Garth, he's level 9,000. You know what I'm saying? Like, this dude dresses up as like a full-blown, like Star Wars characters, and then he goes places. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is what I'm trying to say. This is not Halloween. This is like a Tuesday in Garth's life, right? And he embarrasses his daughter along the way, which I think is the primary function of a dad. And that's the most important part of this story. He's got one daughter, one child, that's it. Her name is Emma, pictured here in the 2nd grade, pictured here in the 8th grade. Now, ever since Emma was about in the 2nd grade, she started receiving these little napkin notes in her lunchbox. Do you know what I'm talking about, right? Like little words of encouragement scribbled on a napkin from her dad. Okay, so picture this. You're an 8-year-old girl, okay? Now, I've never been an 8-year-old girl, but some of you have, so just picture it with me, right? You're skipping to the lunchroom or whatever 8-year-old girls do to get around, and you sit down at the lunch table, you take the PB&J, the apple slices, the chips out, right? And then you see something like this. Remember that guy who quit? Neither does anybody else. Like what? You want me to persevere through the crust of this sandwich, Dad? It's 6 a.m, you need to relax, okay? With these things. I'm a child. But, they keep coming, even maybe an old quote. Yesterday's home runs don't win today's games, Babe Ruth, And there's one that I remember he wrote when Emma was kind of struggling to believe in herself a little bit. You know how kids are, right? He writes, "Dear Emma, You believed in Santa Claus for all those years. You can believe in yourself for 5 minutes, and they keep coming. But, they're cheesy, they are. But it's not really hard to understand his position as a parent, He's got to go to work. He's got to take care of the family, the finances, the home, all this adult stuff, right? And then while that's happening, his daughter, she grows up. From the 2nd grade into the 8th grade, time waits for no one. And so now what? She's got sports and practice, homework, and friends. I mean, how much time does he even get in a day with his daughter? Hour and a half of quality time, maybe? Okay, an hour and a half to take the most precious thing in your existence, his baby girl, try to raise her into a leader. It's not so easy. And so, the note is cheesy, but, the guy's trying. And over the course of all this time, it means a lot to Emma herself. Now, my father, he never wrote me any sort of napkin notes, right? And that's okay. But unfortunately, there's something else that Emma's father and my father have in common. Garth has been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, but it is in his kidney. He's sitting in a small white room, a doctor's office. Hearing this news for the first time, he doesn't quite understand what it means, stage 4 cancer of the kidney. He works in IT, so Garth doesn't get it. So he says to the doctor, well, okay, we'll remove the kidney, right? Or chemotherapy, whatever it is. I got a daughter to take care of. I don't have to explain that to you, but, we'll just move forward. It'll be all right. The doctor looks him in the eye and says, Garth, you are going to die of this. Garth is given an 8% chance of living past 5 years. These two pictures were taken 46 days apart. When someone tells you that the ride is almost over, that your time on this earth, it is coming to a close, you begin to think about this concept of time and how we have spent it, what we are truly committed to. You think about everybody that you love on this planet, and those are the thoughts that would go through Garth's mind. But oddly, in these thoughts, he would go and grab a bunch of calendars, and he would start this calculation. And he decided to write a promise card. Garth wrote, I will write 826 napkin notes for Emma. You see, that is one note for every day of class Emma has left until she graduates from high school. So that no matter what happens to him, no matter the day of the last goodbye, even if he cannot be there, that note, it's still going to be, because every single one of them has already been written in advance, just in case. Dear Emma, sometimes when I need a miracle, I just look into your eyes and realize that I have already created one. Love, Dad. But please, do not get me wrong about the point of telling this story about Garth. To me, this isn't the story of a good father. In fact, maybe your dad was never even there for you. This to me isn't about cancer, although I hope this disease, it never crosses your path. No, this is about doing what you can with what you got. Because so often, even as we are little kids, we say to ourselves, when I grow up and I graduate, but then we graduate and then it becomes, but when I get that first good job though, and then we get that good job and then it's when I retire. When what? When are we going to finally do some good with what little we have today, right now? When does that day finally come along? That's what Garth Callahan might ask me and you. I will sometimes receive thousands of messages in a single day from absolute strangers around the world. And I felt that I had to do something about it. So I quit my job because I am all in. Because I said I would is something I'm asking you to be a part of. In your own way, in your own life. Because I said I would is a social movement, a nonprofit organization dedicated to the betterment of humanity through promises made and kept. That's how I believe this world is made better, when each and every one of us on our shoulders and on our backs takes the burden of a promise to improve ourselves, our friends, our families, a community, a cause. It is a belief in the power of a single individual and the accountability we should hold ourselves to shape this world into something better. And as we look to build a greater society, we must look to the next generation and invest in education. Education is incredibly important. It is incredibly important that we teach our children reading, writing, math, science. That is all incredibly important. But if we do not teach our children how to be decent human beings to one another, then tell me what the point of society is at all. That is why, because I said I would, programmatically invests into character education. The opportunity for children to learn and practice concepts like honesty, self-control, accountability in the classroom. That's why over 840 schools have downloaded our lesson plans, videos, resources freely available to teachers. 155,000 students have sat in live programming through assemblies in the last 5 years. But we can't just allow this to just be a message on paper. That's why in 2016 we started local chapters. Groups of people who believe that a handshake, it still means something, that when you say you're going to be there for somebody in need especially, you show up and on time. We make promises to help others in need. Some of our past and current chapter members are even here today, people who participate in helping others. But we can't just let it be something that is for other people. I mean, we all have individual promises to make and keep. Personal development is part of what we will always be. And so we hold these workshops every month, just try to learn ways to get better at keeping those commitments and then apply those skills to helping others. It's a cycle. We have chapters in schools, and we even have adult chapters, one in this very fine city of ours. I encourage you to learn more about what we do. If you're interested in joining our next promise, we're painting a therapy room and a child care room on the 19th. Then we have a workshop about how to hold yourself accountable, practical steps and methods at Rocky River Library. But learn more at becauseisaidawould.com/Cleveland. It's my hope that one day chapters can follow the same flight path that the Promise Card once did. But that's going to take a lot of work. My name is Alex Sheen, and I am the founder of Because I Said I Would. To me, it is an honor to have your time to share with you how this card was born in my life, what it means to me, and what it means to others, because most of the time I don't get this kind of chance. You know, a lot of times people hear about stuff like this just like maybe on the news, right? The Today Show or CNN jams a camera in your face, and they say, "You got 30 seconds, Alex, try to explain it." And what it comes across as is in these news clips is like, this is some dude who he keeps promises or something and wears the same shirt every day for some reason, you know. And then they just change the channel. They think it's about me. Well, what if it was about me? If it was about me, I would take the $1 million I make in a year just giving speeches. $1 million. I go home a wealthy man. But instead, 100% of that goes to the charity. I make as much as a kindergarten teacher. Because I said I would, it ain't about me. And I'm going to go so far as to say that it isn't even about my own father. Now, that's not to say that I don't miss him. The fortune I would give you for 5 more minutes. But everything that I wish I could say to my dad, everything that I wish I could tell him, I assure you this is not about me, this is not about him, this has been and it always will be about you. Because you know what? My dad, Al Sheen, is gone forever. But you and I, we are still here. We may not all come from the highest levels of education or the greatest families or the wealthiest of resources, but each and every one of you and me, we were born with the ability to make and keep a promise. And so that's what I'm challenging you to do. Because if you've had a promise that you have yet to keep, if you know there's a commitment you know you should make, if you've ever been looking for a sign, well, here it is. And as you contemplate what you might write on that card, remember this quote from a guy named George Bell. It is short and it is simple. It goes like this. You can pretend to care, but you can't pretend to show up.